Right, let's begin here. We start off in the High Court in Pietermaritzburg, where proceedings in the private prosecution of advocate Downer and journalist Karyn Maughan have been postponed to February 2023. In this matter, former President Jacob Zuma has filed the application against Downer and Maughan. The applications by Downer to set aside the case against him and Maughan are set to be heard on the 8th and the 9th of December. Advocate Dali Mpofu, SC, representing Zuma, has told Judge Nkosinathui Chili in the High Court in Pietermaritzburg that the parties have reached an agreement on those dates. Maughan's application for an urgent interdict could not be heard this morning because the presiding judge in the motion court had a conflict of interest. Former President Zuma has accused advocate Downer and Maughan of violating the National Prosecuting Act in October last year. Zuma opened a criminal complaint at the Pietermaritzburg police station against Downer for allegedly leaking his confidential medical records to Maughan. Our reporter Simphiwe Makhanya has more for us on the story.
Well, indeed, the crowds that had gathered here outside the Pietermaritzburg High Court to attend the former President Jacob Zuma's private prosecution case of State Prosecutor Advocate Downer as well as legal journalist Karyn Maughan have now dispersed. We saw a short while ago the former president taking to the stage, addressing the supporters who had come here, basically, saying that he thanks them for their support for all the troubles that is had with the law, and saying that reflecting on that incarceration which saw the July unrest, which were as a result, of course, of him violating a constitutional court order to appear before the State Capture Commission. But here, the former president, he was in court to basically, challenge the private state prosecutor advocate Downer as well as legal journalist Karyn Maughan with regards to that leaked information that was allegedly, confidential information that was leaked by allegedly state prosecutor advocate Downer to legal journalist Karyn Maughan. But let me just step out of the shot and give our viewers a sense of what is currently happening outside the Pietermaritzburg High Court as we speak. Earlier on, we saw obviously a number of supporters making their presence here. Security was heightened. Even this road leading to the court was indeed cordoned off. But coming back to the issue at hand, and the issue at hand, of course, is that a court case between that's former President Jacob Zuma, who is challenging State Prosecutor Downer and legal journalist Karyn Maughan. The judge earlier on was told about the seriousness of this particular matter. The legal representatives of the former president saying that they are taking this step to ensure that they send a strong message that whoever may be involved in any kind of illegality is indeed brought before the justice system of this country. And of course, the two people that we are talking about here are the state prosecutor, that's advocate Downer, who is of course a lead prosecutor in the matter which relates to the arms deal which implicates former President Jacob Zuma. And of course, we know that former President Jacob Zuma has for the longest time been saying that the state prosecutor in his particular matter, advocate Downer, is not a fit and proper person to be overseeing the process, of him, being prosecuted in this particular matter, even going as far as to accuse him of bias. And of course, we know that the National Prosecuting Authority has been vehement in saying that advocate Downer is a fit and proper prosecutor. What the former president is basically trying to do is to avoid his day in court, something that the Jacob Zuma Foundation vehemently denies each time that they comment on the matter. They are saying that this time around they've opted for this particular route, which is the private prosecution route, to ensure that they present the evidence that they have at their disposal with regards to the allegations of leaking this crucial information to a journalist. And that journalist, of course, is News 24 journalist Karyn Maughan, who was also, by the way, inside the courtroom earlier on today.
All right, let's now get some legal analysis. Then we're now joined via Zoom by legal analyst Sinawo Makhangela to weigh in on those developments in this particular case. A very warm welcome to you, sir. It's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Flo, for having me. And thanks to the viewers at home as well.
You're most welcome. Let's start here. I want to start by talking about the issue of urgency, which was raised quite prominently today. What is the relevance of expediency when it comes to this? Surely it can't legally be based on the fact that, which is an example I heard, that someone wants to go back to work.
In fact, what was an urgent matter? There was an application by accused number 2 in the private prosecution. That is the legal journalist, Karyn Maughan. She is also bringing an application similar to that of Mr. Downer as well, to say all what the former president is doing is just delaying, abusing the court processes, has no basis, has no title to prosecute, or whatever the case may be. In fact, she even went further to say the former president did not get what is called a nolle prosecutor certificate from the DPP, the certificate where the NDPP says, I decline to prosecute Ms. Maughan. So her attorneys are saying, no. You cannot prosecute when you don't have a certificate that says the public prosecutor is not going to prosecute her on your behalf. Right. So she decided to bring that application as an urgent application, but because the judge today was not seized with that matter, so the matter has been moved now to December. It will be heard together with that of Mr. Billy Downer as well, saying the same thing.
Yeah, I want to talk about the case now, and it seems that the case does seem to rely on a single evidentiary question as to whether or not these medical records had already been before the court registry. And I mean, in the instance that Advocate Downer had given the journalist Karyn Maughan the medical information of the former president before it was with the court registrar, what law then did Maughan break, in essence, as a recipient of these particular documents? What actual transgression was it on her side? I mean, would that not actually be a transgression on the side then of Advocate Downer?
Well, it remains to be seen, Ms. Flo, because if the court orders that there must be no publication of a certain confidential information, the court order applies to everyone. It's even worse with her as a journalist. If there was such an order, she is duty bound to ensure that she does not publicize that information, more so that she would have gained the knowledge that the court has ordered against its publication. So it remains to be seen what kind of evidence is there to prove the private prosecution's case under the circumstances. It's going to be interesting. But sadly, now...
Sorry to come in. I just want to interrupt. I just want to interrupt you here. Journalists' work, as we have seen, is often protected by this principle of, public interest, what is in the public interest. And it's always, kind of a balancing act when it comes to, what's in the public interest and what's interesting to the public. But where one can argue that this was in public interest, surely then one does have a case to argue in this particular case, I mean, on the side of the journalist.
That flaw does not just arise. If the court has issued an order, everyone has to comply with it. But if the media institutions feel strongly that we need to publicize this information, it is in the public interest that this information must be known, they approach the court so that when they do their job, they are not doing it against the law. Remember, there are many cases about the sealing of the financial statements.
Yeah.
There's a high possibility that some media houses are in possession of that information, but because there is a court order, so they cannot act against the law, even if it is in the public interest. Remember, their own decision is subjected to the rule of law. So once the court pronounces, but if they feel strongly, they are able to approach the courts and make an application and convince the judge to say, no, please lift this. It is not in the public interest that this information must not be publicized. Then the court will consider that application and make it a decision.
Yeah, let's talk about the arguments that are raised by the former president, the weight of his arguments and his reliance, of course, on the NPA to say that, of course, there was a law. There was a law, in fact, that was indeed transgressed. It seems that he does have, some legal tool to rely on, an actual act or actual legislation in place. And I'm trying to see on the side of Downer and Maughan which laws they are then actually relying on, and not just substantial sort of information. It does seem on the surface that the former president, Jacob Zuma, does have actual legislation that does back his case in this situation.
Yes, true that. In fact, because it says for them to publicize that information, they ought to have been in possession of an authority from the NDPP. Absent that, it may give rise now to a successful prosecution by the private prosecutor in the former President Zuma. But even again, this one is suffering the same fate of the State versus Zuma case. The delays, the questions that we've been raising about the delays in that case, this one is facing the same thing now. It has attracted interlocutory applications. The first one was the one of the security for costs. It has been resolved. There's 2 applications now that are pending, even before the trial can resume. Remember, it may have a bearing on that State versus Zuma as well. So you see, but every litigant is entitled to launch an application that is founded in law. An interlocutory application, it is founded in law. The applications they have launched, they are founded in law. Somebody else may come and argue and say, okay, if Ms. Maughan and Mr. Downer believe that there are no basis for Mr. Zuma to prosecute them, and this court has no jurisdiction, it's a question of law. Why they don't then wait? The prosecution kickstart, and then they raise that on argument, so that when the court makes its own judgment. But still, the law, they are not barred from raising those arguments at this stage, and they've launched those applications even before the trial can proceed. Yeah,
the outcome of this case would essentially, change the way in which journalists, media houses, reporters operate, because essentially there are ways and means in which might not be the normal ways that a journalist perhaps gets information, and now this will have to obviously be subject to certain laws or restrictions going forward. What are your thoughts on that, given that a lot of the time this is in public interest, where certain things are being exposed because it is for the public interest, and this might in fact concern journalists and reporters in the way that they then do their work going forward. Of course, I'm saying given whatever the outcome of this particular case then is.
I hope not, because media freedom is very important. It is one of the most important tools in our constitutional democracy. You can't limit that. You can't limit that, because before anything can happen, it's the media houses that ensure that everyone gets the information that helps us on a daily basis. But as I say, let's treat this one as an isolated case, because I am saying if there is a judgment, if there's a court order rather, which says, please, a certain portion must be kept confidential, at least the court order directs everyone. It directs even media houses. Yeah. Where there is no such media houses, I believe they will continue guided by the Constitution. There will be no restrictions as well there. But for as long as they know, let's say, for example, if you did not know, but you publicize an information, again, the court, I do believe that they do listen to a reasonable submission by any party before it. Because one must prove that you were aware before you publicize the information. If you had no knowledge, you cannot be punished in law. Yeah. In particular, if you're doing your work honestly and genuinely. But in an instance where there is a court order, you are aware of it, and then it becomes an isolated incident. It cannot limit any journalist from doing its work. Journalists must continue to operate. They must continue to receive information the way they always do. All right. Because the public depends on them.
All right. Sinawo Makhangela, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so very much for your legal analysis, as always. Thank you, sir. All right, that's Sinawo Makhangela, who's a legal analyst there, weighing in, of course, on the case that, of course, has been much of the talk today in Pietermaritzburg, where those proceedings in the private prosecution of Advocate Downer and journalist Karyn Maughan, of course, we hear have been postponed to February 2023.